You know what we love at the Foretop? We love Erath Winery. Erath is offering a very super special 6-pack of wines exclusively to you, our Foretop listeners, at a fabulous discount. Go to erath.com/theforetop to learn more and purchase those wines so you can taste along with us when we enjoy our next installment of our Oregon Pinot Noir education series, which you can catch later in this episode. So stay tuned for that, and now, time for the show.
The dad bod, yes. But you know what? I got the same dad bod, but I prefer the term father figure.
Here's the good one.
Hello and welcome to the Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in the wine and food world. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. I'm joined by co-host Martin Reyes, a master of wine, international wine consultant, winemaker, importer, and educator. Hey, Martin, I am super excited for this episode because you and I have had some fraught and very funny conversations about this subject.
Yes, Catherine, I'll admit, I'm a big fan of some Vinfluencers. That's wine industry speak for influencers, right? There's others I frankly find irritating, for lack of a better word. And I know, Catherine, you keep telling me like, hey, if I would just post a picture of myself standing in a vineyard with a bikini, I'd get a lot more followers.
Really would.
Anyway, so the point is that we're joined, fortunately, on this episode by some folks who know the business of influencing inside and out. And maybe they can explain why this subject gets under my skin.
I agree, Martin, and I don't love every social media personality either, but I will admit I'm a fangirl of the two who are joining us today. That's Jeff Graham and Mike Matyjewicz, a couple of bubbles-obsessed Canadian wine educators who go by the handle Sparkling Winos. Hey, guys.
Hello. Hey, Catherine.
And we are joined by the grand poobah, the wise sage of this subject, wine industry, digital futurist, Paul Mabray, CEO of Pix.wine, an intuitive wine search engine combined with expert recommendations and editorial. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Thank you for having me. You make me feel all special and bubbly inside. I'm like, I should have something smart to say, but I'm not sure I can live up to it now. Thank you.
We know you can. Well, to start us off, let's meet our resident wine social superstars here, the Sparkling Winos, who bring the most charming positive energy to sparkling wine. I just want to start out to say I'm very curious to learn what it's like to be a Vinfluencer, a wine influencer. So, guys, how hard did you have to work to get all those followers on Instagram?
So maybe by way of introduction, I'm Mike.
And I'm Jeff.
And we are the Sparkling Winos. And we blog all about all things effervescent on sparklingwinos.com. And you can find us on all social media networks at Sparkling Winos. The term influencer is something that, we have had a lot of conversations about ourselves. And I know there's a lot of hot takes and hot topics on it. I think specifically now, maybe there's a bit of a negative spin or connotation with influencers. Oftentimes maybe associated with folks trying to sell, rolling their eyes at someone trying to sell them something, or because, everyone and their dog and their cat is an influencer these days, chasing the influencer dream. So I think with more voices and with more perspectives, there comes room for more criticism, which I think is, more voices the better, but criticism is also valid. But I think being a wine influencer or Vinfluencer, if you will, wasn't a label that we were chasing. And it wasn't something that was a professional avenue for a wine blogger when we started Sparkling Winos back in 2016. So it's interesting to see this sort of category come to the forefront of wine conversation, especially when we think about wine communication or digital communication.
Yeah. So I guess to explain how we got here, I should start with, where we started. Mike and I met each other back in 2004. That was, about 17 years ago now. And if you all can remember, sparkling wine wasn't necessarily an everyday thing back then.
Especially in our market.
Yeah, it was sort of reserved for special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries. But sparkling wine was always Mike and my go-to beverage of choice. We'd go out for dinner on a Tuesday and we'd order a bottle of Cremant or a Cava. And honestly, 99% of the time, the server would say, well, what are you celebrating? And we'd look at each other and be like, nothing. It's Tuesday. You know, we love bubbles. And same with our friends. They were always like, why are you bringing sparkling wine to a house party? That's so weird. It's not your birthday. Obviously, that's changed a lot. And, you know, the explosion of things like Prosecco has sort of allowed sparkling wine a place on everybody's coffee or dinner table. But back then, that wasn't the case. And so we were fascinated by sparkling wine. We thought it elevated every day and elevated your mood. And we wanted to learn more about it. So I decided to start studying wine, and I followed the WSET stream. And around the time I was finishing the level 3, which I think was like late 2015, we thought maybe we should start a sparkling wine blog, because around that time, I don't really think there was many voices that focus just on that subject.
In an accessible way, especially.
In an accessible and fun and sort of colorful way, which is what we always wanted to do. So we wanted to become a go-to resource for all things effervescent, and we wanted to present, I guess, sparkling wine as something that can and should be enjoyed every day. And so to do that,
anytime, sparkling wine anytime.
And to do that, we really wanted to straddle the line between fun and informative. And I think we were able to do that because I have a design background and Mike has an urban planning background. So urban planning is all about maps and a sense of place. And, you know, that's sort of at the heart of wine. It's about terroir and geography. So we combined both of our interests, and this was a fun sort of side thing that we could do together to craft really sort of colorful, punchy, in-your-face content that we paired with engaging and exciting and thoughtful and provoking captions. So that was sort of where it started. And we started with this blog, but of course it expanded to social media. They say timing is everything, I guess. And around the time we started the blog and the social networks, 2016, Instagram was changing. And I think it really sort of shifted from something that you would go and you'd post a picture of your breakfast and post a picture of your morning coffee and post a picture of your cat, to something that was more curated and thought out.
I'm actually sort of curious to hear Paul weigh in here. What are the Sparkling Winos doing that is working?
I think we can already tell they're charismatic. They're real people. They carry, you know, I mean, there's a lot going on there. I think what they're doing right is they're actually blending design and realness. I mean, they're very engaging in their posts, but also look, as Treasury, the big wine company, often says, the influencers aren't just meant to convert sales. They're meant to create content. They're meant to create good imagery and good product shots and lifestyle components so that they can use that to share their story about wine. And they're doing that unbelievably.
Oh, that's really nice of you. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you so much. I'm lost for words.
Yeah. I mean, we have thought, this is Mike here. We've thought a little bit about, you know, what we think has helped us at least stay focused in what we're doing. And from our perspective, I think putting in the time to to conceptualize the content, create it, capture it, deploy it, and engage with those spending their time to engage with us has been something that we've put in some time to do. And I think that's been a strong building block.
Sure.
But also being focused on what we're doing. You know, we only focus on sparkling and maybe sparkling wine adjacent things. Becoming a subject matter expert or an aficionado that's really passionate about something has really also given us a bit of an interesting insight in the Vinfluencer space.
I think a lot of the people that have been following you through since 2016 probably have watched as you've learned and evolved.
Many influencers, they present a lifestyle content, which is obviously the MO for this space. But you, on the other hand, your content is actually solid wine education as well as lifestyle, right, to some degree. So how do you balance the two? I think a lot of people would be surprised to know probably how long it takes and how much thought goes into it.
Honestly, I think a lot of that has to come naturally, because if it's too contrived, it's obvious. Like, I mean, I see some of these influencers and I, you know, echo your sentiments, Martine. Like, sometimes they can be like posing with yogurt or with Tide Pod laundry detergent. And you're like, this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's so obvious that they're doing it for the monetary gain. But I think we, you know, really try to show what is genuinely us. And we're very, very passionate about wine. We've spent many, many years studying it, traveling a lot of time in our spare time and on our dime to learn more about it. So we're excited to share it.
Look, I think one of the reasons that we all are admirers of your work is because we're also enophiles in wine, but that I don't think that diminishes the people that just do it for the money. I mean, to be really honest with you, Adam Driver came out with an ad where he swam in the ocean for Burberry cologne and then turned into a centaur. That was quite unique and different, but he doesn't know anything about cologne. He won't ever be studying how to make it. Does that diminish the ad or the effect it has? And that's an influencer, right? And that's, again, going out to make money, I think is not a bad thing. So I just want to put a pin in that because I think that what you guys do is so magical and it really crosses to where the three of us can admire the work and the wine and the authenticity. But that doesn't, it's a spectrum.
Listeners, if you haven't seen the Sparkling Winos feed, Jeff and Mike are adorable. You guys are adorable. Like, you are so, I mean, it's not just that you're both very good looking folks, but just that your smiles, you seem so genuinely excited about sparkling wine and so happy to be together. I don't know if you guys drive each other crazy after. We don't see the after hours when you've been blogging and you're tearing your hair out and you're like, why are we doing this? But you just seem so happy to be together and celebrating sparkling wine together. And it's just infectious. And that I hear what you're saying, Paul. It's like, if someone who has that kind of aura, that kind of energy, that is infectious and it really is powerful. And maybe we should be celebrating that.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine. And don't get me wrong, Paul, I totally agree with you. And, you know, there's the influencer thing is a spectrum. There's so many people doing it for totally different reasons, right?
If we stop and look at this entire category, we have to apply the same awareness that we do with something as simple as wine, which is not simple at all, in the fact that there are some wines that are just a beverage, there are some wines that are luxury, some wines to lay down, right? And especially when there's an explosion of, let's say, the Pinot Noir category after a specific movie, right? All of a sudden, there's a bunch of wineries that are making Pinot Noir because there is a growing demand for it, and it's a crowded space. And eventually, you look at it and it becomes granular. Some are making cheap and cheerful and easygoing Pinots. Some are putting their entire ethos behind the grape, making it majestic, making it magical, making it ethereal and expensive, right? So then there is this proliferation of versions of Pinot Noir. The way now I'm applying this back to us here at this subject, there are versions of influencers. So I think that if we see that those tiers and segments of something that is starting to mature, then that's where we can say they coexist. And by the way, this is coming from someone that is, as I mentioned, turned off by some segments, but I still want them to exist.
But we need them. I have to be honest with you. Look, wine is a declining category. There's less and less consumers. It's a confusing category. And if we had gatekeeping to the ability for people to go out and draw people in from Boda Box to Petrus, you know, it's our job to be welcoming in a big tent. We've been in an exclusionary industry for a very, very long time. We shouldn't apply that to people helping even guys. So we hired a Vinfluencer once, and they were playing video games and drinking wine. And I can't tell you how many people were so upset that this person was cussing, that they didn't know they were dropping ice cubes in their wine. But we forget at one point in our life, we probably dropped some ice cubes in a glass of wine. We didn't know the difference between Zinfandel and Merlot or Napa and Sonoma.
I still put ice cubes in rosé. I'm just going to say
So
that.
do I.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and that person was going on their journey through wine, and they were learning about the different things that they liked and didn't like. And look, we're all on a journey in this piece. And wine is everything from a beverage that delivers alcohol to an existential experience and everything in between. And depending on the day, I might just want a glass that delivers alcohol with an ice cube in it. Or maybe I want something really wonderful to hang out with you guys and drink together.
That's really what wine is. Wine is a spectrum and it's a journey. We're all in different places. And to both of your points, there's a place for everyone in the space to create content and to share their voice and to uplift, you know, whether it's a winery, a wine destination, a particular wine or an experience that they've had. So there's plenty of space for everyone in the sort of influencer or influencer category to do as they see fit. And so we're definitely proponents and supporters of, you know, of everyone that we've had the pleasure of meeting in this space. You know, we've made some amazing friends and colleagues that consider themselves wine content creators or content creators in the sort of influencer space. And I think there's plenty of uplifting in wine that can happen through the influencer conversation. And that's sort of where we fit.
Catherine and Martine, you remember, like, there's been phases of dislike for people that come into the wine category. And this is a part where we can change that entry level. It wasn't that long ago, they were called bloggers, and they were looked down on disdain and about that they had no knowledge and sharing. And some of them became amazing parts of our industry, whether it's Catherine had a blog, Alder Yarrow, You can name Joe Roberts. There's a lot of great people out there that have started.
I have to correct you, Paul. So I was the wine columnist for the Oregonian newspaper for 13 years. And so I was in this awkward position where I couldn't do a lot of the things the bloggers could do. I couldn't take freebies. I couldn't take free trips, all the stuff. Like I was one of the dinosaurs where we were all like, wait a minute, who are these bloggers? They didn't go to journalism school. They don't know how to fact check. They're getting all the free stuff. We can't go anywhere. And I suddenly said, I'm not going to work for a newspaper anymore because it's so 19th century. And I realized that I think the bloggers there's a freedom to blogging. There's a freedom, and there's also a freedom to the communication, to just reaching everyone to wherever they are. But that was for a long time, there was definitely a lot of resentment in the journalism community. Yep. Because let's just lay it all out here. There are probably 3 or 4 wine journalists who are making a solid, good living. And the rest of the folks, like I was at the Oregonian, that's not, this is a Portland, Oregon newspaper. The rest of us were not making a very good living. And we were trying to stand by these standards and seeing everyone else kind of leap ahead of us. There were a lot of growing pains, but I think we're at a really good place where, like you said, Paul, the people who are blogging really solid information, really educational information, like Jeff and Mike, are kind of rising to the top.
And you were like the coal miners and everyone else is going solar.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting time. I mean, like Catherine's right. It must have been really hard as every newspaper was cutting away their content. And it wasn't just the journalist problem. It was the collision of print and digital were happening at exactly the same time. And suddenly everyone has a free Gutenberg press and a distribution network. It was a transformation against every publication and every channel and every media outlet. So it's been a hard road for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Gutenberg, you guys ever knew that he started his first press to make a book with an old wine press?
Wow, interesting.
Really?
I didn't know that.
That's cool.
It was an old wine press he converted to create the world's first book press.
I swear to God,
Wow.
They're still using that to print the Oregonian.
So, Paul, look, you are the wine industry's digital guru, right? And some analysis from you, if I may. What's the effect that the work that's being done by Jeff and Mike is moving the needle?
Obviously, the medium works because, people increase. And I'll give you a small example that's an anecdote that's a great one. So One Brick Winery is a small winery ran by kind of a Vinfluencer. She's also a country western singer, not tier A, but a solid singer. But she talked about on her podcast a lot about wine and launched this brand called One Brick Wine. It went to 20,000 cases in just 1.5 months of sales, direct to consumer. So that one Vinfluencer affected 20,000 cases at an average suggested retail price of $30 a bottle. That's pretty amazing, actually. I'm sure that if you guys launch your own sparkling product, you guys could probably move a good 5,000 to 10,000. Look, wait a second. I saw that look in his eye there. He's like, wait.
It's an idea bubbling out in their minds, I think, right now. Yeah.
Well,
we have a private label that's not for sale right now, but you never know what the future holds.
One thing that I want to touch on, and maybe this is a hot take, and sorry, Paul, if I'm diverting from your really awesome point, but, there is this conversation around influencers being sort of maybe tasked with or expected to sell so much. And, you can only sell so much that is available. We've worked with some brands who have had very high expectations for something, but, if you're in a niche market with a niche product and a small amount, how much of that will move from one social post? So I think, a social post can help sell the story, but it's maybe not going to sell out your seller.
At the end of the day, we're not Beyonce. So unless you got Beyonce posting your wine,
guys. No, but I mean, you're right. It's the objectives that the brands and the wineries want to lean into. Maybe they want to tell a better story. Maybe they want you to create the content that they can reuse over and over again. And the cost structure for you to do it is 1/10 of hiring a professional photography team and doing a photo shoot, and probably gets a better result, to be really honest with you. And depending on your audience, maybe they want to touch on a niche that you have in the sales and start introducing a product. There's so many objectives, Martine, that play into this. And so sales is the binary choice that we do, but that's even a broken conversation because, to their point, is it in distribution? Is it direct to consumer sales? Is it market oriented?
Yeah, it's just brand identity, right? I mean, brand awareness.
It's all of those things. It could be category awareness. Like, you know, these gentlemen are doing a wonderful category awareness. Sparkling needs more proponents.
You know why sparkling wine is actually so versatile?
Absolutely.
Because even though it's sparkling wine, it's still wine.
Dad jokes.
I mean, that is power right there. It's brand awareness. It's not selling one bottle at a time. It's making the consumer just aware of this category.
You guys must face the pressure, though. The brands come, and this is no offense to any winery that's listening. Oftentimes, their marketing efficacy or experience is pretty low weight. So they're asking the wrong questions and setting you up for failure more than they're actually trying to, you know, when you deal with mature brands or more mature agencies, I'm sure that it's a lot easier to achieve the objectives that they're sending to you or asking you to do, right?
For sure. And I think it depends, I guess, as well on the objectives that are set, and having clear objectives is always helpful. I know we're always talking about how much time is spent on trying to suss out those objectives when people approach us, because, you know, we can help to drive the conversation and move the needle maybe forward a little bit on a sparkling wine product or an experience, but it's only sort of should be part of a marketing approach and perspective. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, people can be pretty obtuse sometimes when they approach us and, you know, be like, let's collaborate. And we're like, okay. And they're like, what can you do? And I'm like, what do you want?
Sometimes it's like these philosophical questions before the actual, okay, you want some content, you want us to review a sample, maybe there's, you know, some other opportunity, but yeah.
And people don't necessarily always know the amount of work that goes into it. They think you just snap a photo and post it on Instagram. But like Mike said earlier, it's learning about the product, conceptualizing it, finding the right story, like deploying it, engaging with people, you know, recapping and sending them.
It's almost like a mini marketing campaign with everything, because we have to sort of think about how the product fits within our brand story and our perspective, you know, whether we like the product is also a factor. Sure. But it's also, you know, in the COVID environment here in Canada, we've been locked down for so long, and, you know, I'm not making a statement about that at all, but I think it's, you know, how do you enjoy wine in a situation where you don't have a lot of the important components that come with wine, which is the lifestyle element. It's the experience. It's the people, you know, you're not going places. So we've been very fortunate to have, a great run during this, because there was a digital pivot where we've been able to sort of do what we've always been doing. But there's a lot of, you know, having wine at home. And yeah, so I think that's it's been an interesting year, that's for sure.
And now it's time for history lesson number 4 in ERATH's Pinot Noir education series. And just a reminder, folks, along with each lesson, we will be tasting wines from the 4Top 6-pack. That's 6 bottles that ERATH is offering just to us for a killer discount at erath.com/the4top. Now today we're tasting the 2017 Knight's Gambit Pinot Noir, a single vineyard wine from the heart of the Dundee Hills. This is a really delicious wine. What do you think, Rachel?
I love this wine. I think it's super pretty, really elegant, smooth on the palate, really like velvety, a lot of blueberries and clove spice. Absolutely delightful.
Lovely, lovely. What do you think, Izzy?
Immediately I thought I want to pair it with a fatty fish of some sort of salmon. I think that would be delicious.
Yes, I agree with you. Those smoky notes on the wine would be so good with like a barbecued salmon, a grilled salmon. You can really taste that Dundee terroir, those delicious red cherry flavors I always associate with the red, iron-rich Jory soils of the Willamette Valley's Dundee Hills. Now, Knight's Gambit is actually the title of a chess move, as well as a short story collection by William Faulkner. I'm talking Knights like Knight, Knight. And it's one of 2 estate vineyards for ERATH, the other one being Willakaya Vineyard. Senior Director of Winemaking Gary Horner has been doing this for more than 30 years, so he is a master of a single vineyard, or vineyard designate, as we say in the industry, wine, like this one, the Knight's Gambit. But he also makes really beautiful blends and has long-term relationships with outstanding growers throughout the Umpqua, Rogue, and Willamette Valleys of Oregon. But listeners, you've got to taste these wines for yourselves. So get your 4Top 6-pack at erath.com/the4top. You will receive these wines at a special discounted price that's about $40 off retail. And don't forget, you can save an additional 10% if you join the ERATH mailing list before you shop. All right, back to the show. Thanks, ERATH. Paul, one more question before we transition to our next topic. You and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, and you made a really good point. You said wine critics are not moving young people away from hard seltzers. I mean, what the wine industry has to worry about is entire other categories, such as hard seltzer. And it's not people who are giving a wine a score of 99 who are going to get that next round of consumers off of that. Wine companies, they don't even see what the challenge is.
It's hard to see the forest through the trees, and on a per ounce basis, we're the most expensive alcohol beverage product. Actually, we're also the most complex, or the most problematic with their own kind of pre-built barriers, and we simplified things to the scores for a while. That was a functional role, and they've stopped being effective. What used to be the 100-point scoring is really reduced to a 10-point score, to be really honest with you. And nothing over 97 or 98 moves the needle in the sales channel. And even then, if you go to Wine Still Sold Out or Last Bottle or any of the flash sites, they're still seeing 98-point, 99-point wines for half off. The world is awash with a lot of different brands. We need new ways to lean into that. We need new ways to make wine accessible. And if you even look at the critics, now they're behind paywalls. There's not a critic in the world that doesn't have a paywall, whether it's James Suckling, Jeb Dunnick, Jancis Robinson.
So no one's going to enter the market if they have to pay for a paywall.
Why would you? I mean,
to read something they don't even know what's behind it. Yeah.
And they don't care enough yet. They're still just in the beginning of their journey. Why do I want to pay a paywall when is it red or white? Is it Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc? I'm just barely at the beginning stages, and the scores are, to me, confusing because I don't know who they are. We do interviews actually with consumers, and it's just amazing how much they're struggling with scores. They don't know the person. They don't know the taste. The amount of super critics in the world, there's only 25 in the world that have an audience of over 100,000 people. That's a small group of people, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Martine, I'm just going to be brutally honest here. Like, you studied for years and years and years to attain your Master of Wine certificate. But, we've talked about people with these compelling personalities really do drive sales in sort of this indirect, this branding way. But at the same time, someone like you, you've worked so hard, you've studied so hard, you've taken years out of your life to do this. And how do you feel if, we've been joking about if you would just pose in a bikini in a vineyard, but, these people, these thirst traps who maybe aren't doing any wine education, they're just looking fabulous in a vineyard and taking a picture of themselves. And they're shooting to stardom, and they're suddenly being, celebrated by the wine world because they're posing these sexy photos of themselves. How does that make you feel as someone who's a master of wine?
I think first we must call it what it is whenever there is, an alluring person who poses sexy photos, right? It is, in very neutral terms, we have to say that it is a call for attention. The critics would say it's a distraction from the content or the subject matter. Marketers would say that it's a perfect tool because it draws attention, right? And so I think about, well, what the audience does with that post of sexy something around wine, that's your own issue. That's your own thing, right? It's not their problem. It's yours if you're distracted in a way that you find uncomfortable, right? Actually, that reminds me of a joke here. You can't blame anyone else if you fall in your own driveway. That's your own dumbass fault.
I mean, look, it's part of the attention grabbing that does that. Is it the right answer always? No. Sometimes it's education. Sometimes it's a funny video where you have Ryan Reynolds doing aviation gin and hilarious stuff. There's different ways to grab attention, but I think that we shouldn't lose track of the skill and the amazingness that you've done to get a Master of Wine. And that comes with different benefits and different influence. You influence at the top of the sphere, not at the bottom.
Yeah, but what's funny is that you say that at the same time, the influence that's there is influence for the trade. It's not influence for the public, right? No, most of the people who drink wine do not know Master of Wine or what that stands for or what that means, and that's okay. And they actually sometimes accidentally confuse it with the Master Sommelier credential. That's besides the point. The point is when Catherine's asking, hey, what do you feel? How do you feel like that? And I keep going back to, however I feel, whatever I think, it's my responsibility, right? It's not the messengers, it's not the influencers' problem. They are free and should always be free to express the message, the content, decide their timing, decide their appropriateness, and it's on each of us to respond. My personal answer is, for me, if Catherine, if you're asking me as an MW, as a 20-year wine professional, it's my issue, right? So therefore, I do mute some of those influencers because it's my decision to choose how I react, right? So I turn some of them off, or maybe I still follow some, or maybe I don't follow them, or maybe I repost the ones that I think have things that matter to me, or no matter what, I will still fight for the right for every influencer to have their space. Just because I'm not in their audience doesn't mean that I should belittle them and say, oh, that person has not had their WSET level 2 or 3. So what? You don't need to have any credential to teach about wine and to
drink it.
Right?
You don't need any credentials to drink wine.
There's actually a very concrete example right now. A former person who worked with Reyes Wine Group, my company, her name is Paige Comrie, and she was a project manager at Walmart, and she took a class from me a few years ago, and she started she's started working through Wines with Paige, and just shot out. I don't know how many followers she's got. Many more followers than I do. Right? She left my company, and she's now in the quote unquote wine business, doing her thing, completely overshooting me as an official influencer. I don't know how many people I have following. It doesn't matter, in the sense that I'm not trying to inhabit that space, right? So, and I love the fact she did that. She has overtaken me in this sphere. It's awesome. Do I follow everything she does? No, I don't need to. I don't have to, but I want to make sure that I'm still supportive.
I think that's a great answer. And I think you're 100% right. And I mean, I think the other part is we create this gatekeeping model. I'm sure you guys messed up when you talked about early sparkling wine. I think the most notorious case of that is Madeline Plunkett from Seattle, who does Wine Folly. She came out with a whole fresh approach. She was probably the first kind of influencer of real size, I'd say, Catherine, that grew to do a book, made mistakes in her book.
She did.
And that's okay. Was she eviscerated by the trade because she came through an asymmetrical approach to the journey? She came and brought a fresh approach. And even if it was an adjustment of maybe something even Jancis had done in the past, of a different kind of mapping or structure, she did it in a fresh new way that brought and made wine approachable to people. And we should have welcomed her with huge arms and helped her get smarter and better about the mistakes she made so she could carry more messages to more people in a better way.
Wine is about the product or the beverage, but it's also about the people and the place.
It's 2021. We don't have to take it so seriously after the year and a half that we've had, and I love seeing people, doing just the creativity. Is if they don't know anything about wine, I don't care if they can take a really cool creative photo that evokes something from me, and whether it's a laugh or like, wow, that's really, really interesting, then all the power to them. And yeah, like we said earlier, the influencer space and spectrum is a broad one, and there's space for everybody.
Totally.
I was hoping you guys would be a little more negative and snarky.
Well, okay, so the thing is, we were talking about this earlier, and it is extremely competitive.
I'm curious, do you guys, because you guys are in the game, I mean, Sparkling Winos, you're in the game. Do you talk about, who's doing quote unquote media doping? I don't even know what that means. And comment pods where people are sworn by a blood oath to like each other's posts and all that kind of thing.
We should definitely talk about the media doping and all those pieces too. But please go ahead. Tell us about the game. Tell us the rat race.
How do you play the game?
It's it's a bit of a circuit, and there's some great supporters and some amazing people that understand what a wine communicator or an influencer could do. There's some that maybe don't understand and choose not to, and I think that's fine. But I think there's definitely a lot of competition. And we've been on, been doing this for about 5 years, and we've seen people come in with a positive attitude and a negative attitude. And I think those that have come in to the space with a positive attitude from the perspective of collaborating and understanding other people's perspectives and uplifting one another have definitely been more successful than those that have been a bit maybe, underhanded or competitive. I think that competition happens in every field. So to not expect it to happen in this space is, maybe a little bit naive. So we were aware of it, when we started, and as people started paying attention to what we were doing, we've had people approach us. They're like, we want to be doing what you're doing. Tell us how you did what you did. And, there's really no secret sauce or formula to tell someone how to achieve the same outcome or the same process in their wine journey, because there's different things that affected us in our journey.
Well, I mean, let's be fair about this. There's a lot going on here. So you remember, this is a profession now. This is not a byproduct. This is a profession. And the influencers are fighting for dollars. I mean, let's be really clear. They're trying to earn money. Some people are fighting for less than others. Some people it's a side hustle. Some people it's a fun journey. Some people it's how they make their money, right? And they're fighting in a medium that's evolving as fast as they're building the learnings that's changing. And that medium's asking for different things. It wasn't that long ago that Facebook told every business to go buy likes, right? And they sent you out chasing likes. And then they changed the algorithm that said if you had a likes that were dead likes, your organic content wouldn't work. And so even within the game itself, you're learning. And so these pods that came up, that we're looking, they were originally kind of cool things. I'll help you if you help me. And then they became kind of gaming the system, right? And hiring people to give you followers. And each one of these things, it's an ever evolving, changing to try to keep up with how the medium works. But it's hard work. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that people forget. It's not easy to do this stuff. It's not just a fun gig. It's a profession.
Absolutely, Paul. And it's getting harder and harder as, Instagram, obviously, if it were up to them, I'm sure they would eliminate the influencer to some degree, because then companies would just be throwing money at them for sponsored posts, you know what I mean? Rather than paying these influencers or influencers to create content.
They need influencers. These influencers create draw, just like movie stars, just like, So you're the entertainment. No offense. I mean, you're part of the draw of the platform, right?
For sure. But I think the biggest disruptor, is the change to focus on pushing sponsored content. The sort of pay to play model, that definitely changed, I think, how some communicators chose to go about their strategy. And it's definitely, like you said, affected the maybe reach or output for some people. There's some disheartening elements of this when you put in so much time and effort into something and, you're not rewarded by the platforms that you sort of utilized to support, your wine journey in a digital sense.
It's a funny symbiotic relationship that you have with the platforms, right? And it's their job is to extract dollars from the advertisers. Your job is to create audience to bring them there, and then they have a tough time.
Does the quality of the influencer matter, right? Like, could a cool Chicago with sommelier, right, with 3,000 or 4,000 followers change the wine market as or more effectively than a California fashionista with 50,000 or 500,000 followers?
So I think that using the vanity metrics won't get us there, but it's like, what's the objective? I mean, and how are you going to reuse that content and how are you going to deploy that influencer to? So as an example, you're an influencer. If I brought you in with a bunch of trade and we did some TikToks and you tasting and we made it fun, even though you probably have a small following count, I could probably change a bunch of people's minds of how they're drinking wine and use that content over and over again. I don't know that there's one right recipe. There's many, many times that you've had gigantic followings. I mean, I won't mention some of the Vinfluencers, but they have hundreds of thousands of followers and we're not able to sell 100 cases.
Right.
It's all contextual. There's a lot of timing. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of focus that has to move that needle if that's the attempt you're doing.
I do feel like I have to weigh in because I'm the only lady tonight on this recording session. And one thing that I am really conflicted about is I feel like a lot of the female influencers are trying to seduce the viewer in a way. There's one who I'll put it on our social media feed who consistently puts, how else do I put it, nipple shots in her wine content. And I think one of the things I love about you guys, Jeff and Mike, is that you are kind of celebrating each other and your relationship. And so you're not like looking at the camera and saying, come hither. You're saying, hey, we're having fun together and we're exploring wine together. So I guess I want to throw this out. And I hate to sound like I'm negative against these women, because there is, as our friend of the pod, Esther Mobley, has written about misogyny in the wine industry and misogyny against female influencers. And it is a problem. And I'm very conflicted about it. I mean, women do have this kind of power where, for whatever reason, if a woman poses in a sexy pose, things get sold. That's just the way the world works.
Look, I struggled with it for a while. It took me a lot of looking at the category and trying to understand what are we balking at, to Martine's point. Where's the problem with us in this piece? And sex has always been a component of marketing and advertising, and whether we like it or not, and it's sex across both genders.
And why is it a problem? Because wine is inherently sensual.
Sure.
Why are we suddenly puritanical when we see these posts? Wait a minute, it's about having this incredibly sensual experience.
If I choose to critique and say, oh, nipple shot, no training, she doesn't know, he doesn't know, they don't know what they're talking about, blah, 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 right? Like the get off my lawn kind of attitude, right? Of not old, but curmudgeonly classist thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that person deserves to feel that way, and that person deserves to react that way and shut off the channel, right? It's when that person says, no, I'm not just going to move on to a different channel or mute that influencer, but when I'm going to make it a mission to convince others that Vinfluencer is misguided or wrong or empty and therefore shouldn't be listened to, right? It's when it becomes this sort of public screed. You are then trying to counter their influence by shutting them down.
Mm-hmm. I think if we look at the most vocal individuals in the sort of spectrum of critiquing Vinfluencers and whatever they choose to do with their bodies and how they display it, the commonality is they're typically older gatekeepers. And that, to me, can be very problematic because there is an element...
Older white male gatekeepers.
Absolutely, exactly. And I think the issue here is misogyny does exist. The brunt of the critiques are typically female Vinfluencers or influencers. We've been critiqued as well from an LGBT perspective. We've had some harsh critiques, which I think, speaks to homophobia in the wine industry, which maybe isn't as prevalent as, at least from our perspective, from the misogyny that we've seen. And the women in this space tend to truly be, unfortunately, held to a different standard.
Actually, I'm glad you guys brought up the LGBTQ, and I'm disheartened to hear that you've gotten that feedback, especially since your content is polished, it's fun, it's amusing, it's educative, and it's all these things, and
it's human.
And it's exactly. And Catherine is a fangirl for obvious reasons.
Whether it's the wine industry or some other industries, it does exist, and we've tried our best to sort of either ignore or acknowledge where we felt there was a need to sort of respond to someone and provide our perspective. But I think it's unfortunate it exists. It's getting, better and better with each day. I think there's a lot of open-minded and lovely people who, take the time to educate themselves on different issues. And, we're always learning about, like you mentioned, different communities, whether it's folks that, face different systemic barriers due to racism or whatever. We're always learning about those things as well. We're white people of European background, and for us to learn about the struggles of BIPOC communities and, do what we can to support them is something that, we've tried to do as well, especially knowing how many barriers exist for folks in the BIPOC communities to enter the wine world is. So we've tried to share resources where we can, but I think, not to take away from the question about, the female experience and the misogyny experience by Vinfluencers and, insert our LGBT perspective. But I think the takeaway for us is that there's many communities enjoying wine, many communities participating in wine and learning about wine, and we learn from one another. And I think that's how we can move the needle forward, by listening to each other's perspectives and actively listening about our experiences and sharing them, because, wine is a spectrum and a journey. And I think we all fit in there somewhere with our lived experiences and, whether they're personal or professional.
I love that sentiment. And I think we need to close on that note because we're running out of time. But we do have our fun little dessert wine course. So who has a dessert wine course to share with us? Paul, you look like you have one. You've got a smile on your face.
Well, I am restarting Ted Lasso season 2 with Canary Island wines. That's been kind of my guilty pleasure. So they're very fun if you haven't tried them before. And also a white Riojas is my one for tonight.
So you're on a Spain kick.
Yes, I am on the Spain kick. Yes, I'm Spanish, I'm deep down. So yeah,
love it. So you guys are all familiar with the Golden Girls, right?
The greatest show of all time.
So our dessert course is a book called Drinks on the Lanai by Eloise Anders, which is a cocktails, mocktails, and cheesecake cookbook inspired by the Golden Girls. So there are various chapters, my favorite being Fun and Flirty, which are cocktails that Blanche Devereaux might come across as a delicate Southern belle. We've been watching a lot of Golden Girls throughout the COVID crisis, and it's obviously just instills instant joy in both of us. And what better way to watch an episode than to pair it with a Golden Girls themed cocktail?
And cheesecake.
So that's our dessert.
Yeah,
and cheesecake, of course. Of course.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to buy it immediately. Thank you. My sparkling dessert wine course, in honor of the Sparkling Winos, what I am sipping tonight is the Pares Balta Blanca Cucine 2012. What is that? That is a cava from Spain, and it is organic and biodynamic. And Martin, you and I are both doing some teaching for the Cava DO.
Yes, we are.
And one exciting fact I just want to share with our listeners is that by 2025, the entire production of the Cavas de Guarda Superior appellation will be 100% organic. So I think that's a really good gauntlet to throw down to other wine regions, that all of basically the reserve level Cavas from Spain will be organic within just a few years. Listeners, you can find the Sparkling Winos online at sparklingwinos.com. You can find Paul Mabray online at Pix.wine. And if you have not checked out this platform, you have got to check it out. It's pretty cool. And Martin, where can our listeners find you online?
They can find me and a lot of people that work with me to help make the world a better place is at reyeswinegroup.com. And yeah, that's it.
Wonderful. And you can find me, Catherine Cole, at catherinecole.com. But more importantly, please go to thefourtop.org and listen to all of our back episodes. And listeners, we want to know who your favorite Vinfluencer is. So please visit thefourtop.org, where you can find our social media handles and tweet at us or Instagram us or whatever you want to do, influence us. Please subscribe to The Four Top on your favorite podcast app. Please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts so others can find the pod. Signing out here from the high-fiber, protein-packed, sparkling city of Portland, Oregon. So good to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and good night.
This has been the Four Top Podcast. Catherine Cole is our executive producer, Izzy Kramer is our senior producer, and I'm Keelan King, sound supervisor. We are also assisted by audio editor, Michelle Richards, our production assistant, Rachel Grossman, and our social media assistants, Lex Rule and Nick Toole. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, reach out to us on social media, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. And if you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes, NPR One, or Spotify, please do so and leave us a rating. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you still there? Oh, well, if you're still listening, then I need to tell you something. I need to tell you about the fabulous swag over at sparklingwineanytime.com. Sparkling Wine Anytime is, of course, your favorite new book about all things bubbly, but it is also a wonderful website designed by our team, Lex and Rachel. And we have gifts and goodies galore for you. We have sparkling wine themed beach towels, teas, cocktail napkins, fancy wine flasks, adorable tote bags, and more. And guess what? Your purchase will help to support a favorite cause of ours, Ahivoy, that's AHIVOY, check it out, which provides education and career training to vineyard stewards in the Willamette Valley. So it's a win-win for everyone, and who doesn't love sparkling wine anytime? Please head to sparklingwineanytime.com. We would love to see you there. Thanks. We love you all. You're wonderful. Kiss, kiss.